Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel and College Process. Once again, I'm Ed from Principia Prep, and today we're going to be going over how important are the SATs, going SAT optional versus sending your SAT or ACT scores in. But before we begin, if you are new to the channel and are looking for additional college content, please hit the subscription button down below. It will notify you when new videos do come out, as well as we are still running for the seniors and everyone else out there the James Russo Memorial Scholarship. If you're interested in our organization's scholarship program, very simple, down below in the description is the link for the video explaining how our scholarship program works here for the James Russo Memorial Scholarship. As well as also down below in the description is also our organization's Venmo, as well as our buy us a coffee if you just want to help out our organization, keep making these videos for you guys out there. Other than that, let's jump right into today's video. How important are the SATs? Going SAT optional versus sending your SAT or ACT scores in. Now, essentially with us going into the spring period, a lot of juniors, a lot of sophomores are starting to think about, should you take the SATs or ACTs, which direction to go into, which test makes the most sense, so on and so forth. Does it even make sense for you guys to take the SATs or ACTs anymore, with so many colleges still remaining SAT, ACT optional? Now, to kind of give you guys an idea of how this whole process works, or at least from my perspective of how important the SATs or ACTs will be going forward for every academic year from now on, let me kind of go back a little bit for you guys here to explain kind of how we got here. Now, right around 2019, 2020 academic year, the SAT, ACTs, a lot of the schools were SAT, ACT optional, about 1,500 or so. So this wasn't a new thing where a lot of schools were SAT, ACT optional. In fact, a lot of name brand schools were SAT, ACT optional before the pandemic hit and made basically everyone SAT, ACT optional, and not requiring students to send the applications with SATs or ACTs to be considered for acceptance as well as scholarship consideration. Now, that being said, once we did have the pandemic start, unfortunately, literally every school, except for a handful of them, went SAT, ACT optional. So every school basically going SAT, ACT optional up to this point in time did a few things. Right off the bat, it made it very easy for every student to be able to apply to a college. And the problem with that is it made it very easy for every student to apply to any college they wanted. So obviously the competition levels went through the roof, and colleges admissions percentages dropped dramatically because it got so many more and more and more applications. So the good perspective was it allowed every student to apply. But also the bad perspective is it added so much more competition to the entire process. So going forward from here on in, what's very likely going to happen is it's going to depend on your student's list. The college list is going to dictate how important the SAT, ACT is, or how unimportant it is, to be honest with you. And I say from this perspective, I'm going to give you guys kind of an outline here of reach colleges, target schools, and safety schools, and how each one's going to be affected if you consider going SAT optional or sending test scores in. Right off the bat, let's talk about reach schools. Now, obviously, everyone out there has a different level of reach schools. For some of you out there, a reach school is going to be a Harvard or Stanford, etc. For some of you out there, a reach school is going to be a Cornell. Some of you out there is going to be a Lehigh. Some of you out there might be a UConn or a UDel or a UCLA or a UTexas or a URichmond. So every student has their own level of reach school because it all depends obviously on your academic profile. Now, to figure out obviously what schools for you guys are reach, target, and safety, you always check with your guidance office or your college advising office at your high school. They'll be able to tell you which schools are in the reach category, which are going to be more difficult to get in for you, are in the target level where basically it's a 50-50 chance of you getting in, and of course the safety level, essentially the schools you're kind of guaranteed in. Now, that being said, talking about the reach schools, if it had reached a reach school situation, very likely the SATs, ACTs are going to be hyper important for you. From this perspective, the way I look at it from every school's perspective, by the way, when I'm looking at SAT, ACT optional situations for any student or family I help out, is very simple. How competitive is that school for that student? The more competitive, the more likely I would like to send SAT, ACT scores in from the perspective of this consideration. If you look at every admissions pool, now every admissions pool basically has multiple different little pools inside of the big application pool. So the way to think about it is every admissions office has, let's call it, one giant lake of applicants, okay? And within that lake are little ponds. Each one of these little ponds are different groups. First generation student, engineering student, the nursing student, the students whose family has the name on the library, the athletes, the legacies, all these different ponds make up essentially the lake, or the pond, let's call it, of admissions. Now, from an SAT optional, ACT optional, or sending in test scores in perspective, that covers the entire pond, is the way to think about it. Now, from my perspective, the way I look at it is, from an SAT, ACT optional situation is, if you go SAT, ACT optional, you're competing against the entire 100% of students. However, if you are able to send your test scores in, you minimize the amount of competition level you have because of the fact that you're getting away from the SAT, ACT optional pool, let's call it. So what that typically does, in some cases, reduce your competition in some cases by as much as half. So obviously, that's a big amount of competition being reduced if you can send test scores in. I am a proponent going forward that if your SAT scores are close to that school's median average score, and you can call any school's admissions office and ask them, what's your median score? And if I'm close to it, I'm probably sending the test scores in. Even if I'm under, so let's just say the score requirement there, the median score is a 1400 and I have a 1360, I'm definitely sending it in because I want to get away from the SAT optional situation to give me hopefully a better chance of getting my student in. Now, obviously, if I'm way below the median score, then I'm going SAT, ACT optional. It will be more difficult, obviously, going forward because of the fact that so many more colleges are now asking for the SATs. Obviously, just a couple days ago, Dartmouth came out and said they want the SAT scores. Yale has come out and said they want the SAT scores. So more and more schools are going down the path of wanting the test score, going away from SAT optional. So that is showing that the SAT is becoming more and more a requirement for them to make a better choice of which students they want. So if you are looking at reach colleges, then sending test scores for you guys is a key factor in whether or not you will be able to get into your reach school or not. Now let's talk from a target school perspective here. For target schools, it's once again, those are 50-50 chances of getting in. For these schools here, it does matter as well as it does matter in the reach schools. The only difference here is obviously your application is stronger because it's a target school. You have a better chance of getting in, higher percentage value than you do for a reach school. So the SATs lose a little bit of value here as far as they're not a huge requirement. However, you do want to send them in because it does give you a boost and get you away from, in some cases, as many as half the competition that you have to be looking at away from them to give you a better chance of getting in. Now, for both the reach and the target schools, let's say we can't get anywhere near the mean SAT average. We're nowhere near it. We don't test well for whatever reason. We get anxiety. The student doesn't do well. They're not a test taker kind of person, etc. Very simple. Your goal right off the bat for both reach colleges and target schools is to send your application in for admissions as soon as possible. So if we start school, let's say the end of August, or if we start school in the beginning of September and the guidance office is ready and running, basically ready to go, let's say by September 9th or 10th, and they can send applications out then, that's when you want to start sending out applications. You do not want to wait for what typically a lot of students do, which is usually closer to November 1st or November 15th, the early action, the early decision deadlines. You don't want to wait until October 28th or 29th or 30th for either one of these deadlines. You want to be a month ahead of your competition, sending your applications in to give yourself a better chance of getting in. From this perspective, the longer you wait to send your application in, the less value your application has. From this perspective, every day that you wait after the day that you're able to send stuff in, the more competition you or yourself are creating against you. Because every day you wait, that college will receive 100 more applications, 200 more applications, 500 more applications. Some of these colleges are receiving 80, 90, 100,000 applications, of which they're reviewing between September, October, November, and December. That's 25 to 30,000 applications every single month, or essentially let's call it 500 to 1,000 extra people in front of you because they sent their stuff in earlier. So every day you wait, you create more competition. So maybe last week with your credentials, you would have got in. But now, maybe instead of going as a yes, definite student, maybe you're now in that possibly category. You wait another week or two, and you might automatically be a rejection because so many other students ahead of you have the same criteria, the same academic profile, and they were accepted, so they're running out of seats. It's basically like musical chairs. The longer you wait, that music starts going or stops, etc., and you get less and less chairs, less and less spaces available. Your profile, your academic resume, your application essentially is devalued because you're waiting too long. Your goal right now, if you know your test scores are not going to get there, or they're not getting there through practice tests or taking the SAT and ACT, then what you need to do is you need to meet your admissions rep for your specific region. You need to make sure that you know them one-on-one basis. They know the student on a first name basis. Now, they know what high school you're from. They know what major you're going for. They know how you're applying. You need to have that relationship in place because of the fact that especially if you're going SAT, ACT optional going forward, you need to have them on your side. You need to have that relationship in place so when the application does come in, it's not that they're automatically going to accept you. What you're looking for is that it's excruciatingly difficult for them to say no to you. That's what you're looking to do with a demonstrated interest in building that relationship. Doing the campus tours, doing the online Zoom meetings with them, meeting them in person, college fairs, open houses, whenever they go to your high school. All this stuff, you need to do it. Excruciatingly difficult in the sense that it's painful for them to see your name and want to put a no there. Because let's say they get down to one spot left. and they got 10 applicants and they don't know who you are, you're a very easy no. But if they know who you are, it makes it very difficult for them to say no. But if you're somebody they've never met, some random student from California, some random student from Minnesota, some random student from Ohio, some random student from Florida or New Jersey, New York, etc. If they don't know who you are, then it's very simple to say no. But if they know who you are and they've met you and they have a relationship, it's a lot more difficult to say no. And that's kind of what you're trying to do, is to push them into that yes pile. Now, from a safety school perspective, the reality is good, bad, or indifferent. Your SAT, ACT doesn't matter really that much at all. From this perspective, if you are looking at a school, it's a safety school because you have way more APs or dual credit or honors or IB courses than that college needs, and your GPA is way higher than the accepted GPA for most students going there, then the reality is the SAT would only be just a cherry on top. So for the safety schools, the SAT, ACT, if you want to go optional, doesn't really matter. I would though, however, look at this perspective from, I would contact the admissions office for any safety schools I'm looking at and ask them, if I do go SAT, ACT optional, will that hinder my opportunity as a student to get scholarship funds? Because from the perspective of, for some safety schools, if you go SAT, ACT optional, in some cases they do use that against you for scholarship consideration. So in some cases, they don't even offer you scholarship money unless you send test scores in. So just things to think about as you go through this entire process. So for the perspective of, is the SAT, ACT important going forward? The answer is both yes and no. It all depends on your college list. If it's a REACH school, then in my mind, it's 100% very important you're able to send test scores in. If it's a target school, I'm saying somewhere in that 70 to 80%, it's highly important, but not out of the realm of you can still get in, but you definitely want to send the scores in. And of course, from a safety school perspective, since academically your profile is already going to get you in anyways, the SAT, ACT, sending it in is really more for scholarship consideration, merit aid, or essentially just a cherry on top, let's call it. Now, other than that, if you guys have any questions, any concerns, once again, I do help a lot of families out with the financial aid and admissions process. If you need help, on the screen is my contact information. If you guys do need help, you can either text me or send me an email. I do respond back quickly to both text messages and emails. If you do call, I typically am either with a student or a family or helping out a guidance office or consulting at a college. So it's difficult to get me on the phone, but if you text me or email me, I can typically call you back or email or text you back pretty quickly to set up a meeting if you need help with either the admissions or the financial aid process. And other than that, thank you for watching today's video. Once again, my name is Ed from Principia Prep.